All right, I think we're going to be okay on time. The first part that we went through there is the most generally applicable. I think this stuff is going to be a little bit more specific, so I'm going to go through it pretty quick. But if you do have a question about any of this, and before I start, does anybody have any questions from the first half that came up in your mind?
Yeah, one.
Yeah.
We're talking about investing, not necessarily talking about retirement.
Right. Sure, yeah.
And you said be ready to let it stay put.
Yeah.
If I put money in the stock market, how long do I need to expect to keep it? I put a
Yep.
dollar in.
Great.
How long am I going to leave it?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. Okay, so I get this question all the time. People ask me, okay, I'm saving up a down payment for a house, and in 3 years we're going to buy a house, and it's $20,000, and that's what I need for my down payment. How much of that $20,000 should you put in the stock market? The answer is zero. None of it. Why? Because you need all that $20,000 in 3 years from now. And if you put it in the stock market, there's a non-zero chance that it will be less than that, okay, in 3 years. So it all has to do with your time horizon. So it's similar to the retirement question. The money that you put into your retirement account, that's pretty easy. When do you want to retire? And that's how long you have. So if you've got over 20 years to retirement, then you can be more risky. But if you've only got 5 or 10 years to retirement, you can't be so risky because you need that money. So it's a similar question. It's just the question is, when do you need the money? And if you need that money, you need exactly that amount of money in the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years even maybe, you shouldn't put much of any of it in the stock market because it can go down. Now, but if it's a deal where you think, well, I got this $20,000, I've already got my house, I've maxed out my 401k, but I just got this extra money. Yeah, sure, you can let that ride. You can put that in the stock market and invest all of it if you want to, if you can afford to lose it, or afford to lose a significant part of it. So, yeah, it's all dependent on your time horizon is going to determine how much risk you can take. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the way it'll work is if you say you got $500,000 that you've saved up by the time you retire. Well, if you've got it invested 50-50, you've got $250,000 in the stock market, $250,000 in fixed income. Your fixed income right now is only going to pay about 1 or 2%, something like that. So you're going to be making about $2,500 or $5,000 a year on the fixed income. If you're making, about 10% per year on the stock side, you're going to be making about $25,000 per year. That's average over a long period of time. So you're going to be making about somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 a year on the money that you have in there. And if you're only pulling 4% out, you're only pulling out $20,000 a year. Okay, but you have the drag of inflation. Okay, so that's going to pull down your real value over time. But hopefully that should keep up with that mix. 50% in the stocks, 50% fixed income should be enough return for you to pull your money out that you need to live on, and also keep up with inflation is the idea there. Because do you want $500,000 today or $500,000 10 years from now? Which do you want? You want $500,000? So you would rather have $500,000 10 years from now or $500,000 today? Well, you want it today, right? So you can put it to work for you, right? The answer is always today. $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow, right? And the reason for that is, again, inflation, because the government prints money and devalues our currency. So, and one of the ways you stay ahead of that is by investing it. So, somebody else, Al? Yep. Sure. Yeah. Right. Well, okay, so there are multiple ways, and that is a great segue into the next chapter. And thanks for that. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about retirement plans now briefly, because this is like, well, let me ask this: how many people in here have a job where there's a retirement plan? Okay, not quite as many as I thought there might be, but about half of y'all work at a place where there is a retirement plan. Chapter 5 is called When Somebody Helps You Out of a Ditch, Don't Complain About How They Do It. How and why to take advantage of employer plans. Employer plans are great, okay? At People's Bank, where me and Alan and Selena work, the way our match works is on the first 3% that we contribute, the bank matches it dollar for dollar, 3%. On the next 2%, the bank matches 50%. So if we put in 5%, the bank puts in 4%, okay? So I'm no mathematician, but that's an 80% immediate return. Does that sound like a good deal to you? Yes, right? So as much as possible, everybody should be maxing out their match, the corporate match on their 401k, all right? Now, some 401ks, and People's Bank is in this situation, so if you're really good at your job and you want to come work for us, come talk to us. But some 401ks offer the option of having a traditional 401k contribution or having a Roth contribution to your 401k. Okay? And so what I would say then, Alan, is if you want to do both is maybe consider splitting your contribution. So if you're doing 10% into your 401k, maybe put 5% in the regular 401k side and 5% in the Roth side. And that way you just kind of hedge your bets a little bit there. Or, it depends, like if you're younger and you want to go ahead and build up that Roth side, go ahead and put all your money in the Roth side. Put all in, because you can always build up the taxable account later, So normally, if you got all your money in the Roth, that's great. Just let it build up there. When you get to a point where you need to start taking the deductions, that's when you really should consider putting the money in the deductible. So I would prioritize early on the Roth, and then do the deductible when you get in your higher earning years. So, yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, you're talking about a Roth conversion? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yep, you can do that. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Right. Yeah. Sure, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are Roth conversions, and that's one of the strategies I talk about in here, and it is a great opportunity if you have a big downturn in the market to convert your regular IRA to your Roth IRA at that point. And what that means is basically it's kind of like taking a distribution from your IRA, which normally, it is taxable, but if you just take the money out and put it in your pocket and go spend it and buy a boat or something, then you have to pay not only taxes but also a penalty on it. If you do a conversion, there's no penalty. You still have to pay taxes on it, but if you're in a lower income year, it might make sense to do that, especially if there's a downturn in the market. So, very good point. There's all kinds of different plans, though. There's 401k, simple, SEPs, Keogh plans. There's Rabbi Trust. There's all kinds of different employer plans. Bottom line here, take advantage of it. If you have a company that's willing to match some of it, and the reason companies do that, they want to take care of you. They want you to want to stay there. They want to, give you this benefit. It's just another benefit that a company can give you, and it's a great deal. It's a good deal for the company, and it's a good deal for you. The company gets to write off the expense, and you don't have to pay taxes on the money as it comes to you. So it's just a great deal. So please take advantage of employer plans. Everybody should participate in it if you can. There's hardly any situation where I would say you ought to prioritize paying off debt unless you're just in horrible debt. You might want to stop, contributing to it just for a little while until you get out of debt. But other than that, everybody should contribute to it. If you have a Roth option, consider putting money in the Roth option. And then I talk about there are target retirement date funds. You should invest in a target retirement date fund probably if they have those. Most 401ks have those options. And those are a great one-stop shop instead of thinking about, I need to pick this fund and this fund or whatever. Just put it in the target retirement date fund and forget about it if you have that option. My next chapter, chapter 6, is called Running Naked, Strategies for Self-Employed or Small Business Owners. And this is for people that are self-employed. Do we have any self-employed people here? Okay. Yeah. All right. So if you've got your own company, there are options for you there. There's if you're an LLC, a subchapter S, a C corp, a limited partnership, a sole proprietor, a family limited partnership, a farm. There's all different kinds of structures you can have where you're considered to be self-employed. And for those, it's a little bit harder to have a plan, but there are options for you. And so just be sure to look into that. one good thing that's in the recent tax law is the 199A deduction. Basically, the incentive here, if you're self-employed, is that you want to pay yourself in terms of wages, your W-2 wages. You want to pay yourself as little as is reasonably possible, and then let the rest of the income from the company flow through to you on your K-1. Now, that may sound like Greek to you, and that's okay. But basically, you want to, if you're self-employed, you want to make your salary as low as possible and get away with it and do the right thing. I'm not telling you to cheat anything, but make your salary as low as possible and let the rest of the income flow through to you on a K-1, because there's a huge benefit to doing that in tax savings, okay? And I could dive more into that if you want to, but that's the general plan there that you should be looking at doing. There's also solo 401ks. You can do simple IRAs, SEP IRAs. There's all kinds of, the 401k is a really, it used to be only for bigger companies. Well, now with technology, it's much easier and they're cheaper to administer. And if it's just you working and you're the business, or maybe you and your spouse are in business together, you can have what's called a solo 401k, and there's no administrative cost to having that. If you have a smaller company though, and you have multiple employees, a 401k is going to cost you about $2,000 or $3,000 a year to administer. So you really kind of need to get to a critical mass before you consider implementing a 401k. There are lots of strategies. If you're a higher income earner, there's something called the Mega Roth IRA strategy. Basically, what you do is you allow the 401k to accept after-tax contributions. And so you make your regular contributions, and then you put a whole lot more in there, and then you roll that amount out into a Roth IRA. It's called the Mega Roth IRA strategy. I could talk more about that if any of you have questions about it. And then for maybe if you're self-employed and you're just trying to wondering how do I get started on this, I don't have anything, what do I do? Just open up a regular IRA or a regular Roth IRA and use that. You can do up to $6,000, $6,500, I think. I need to know what the answer to that is, how much money you can do in a year to a regular IRA. But you can have make about $6,500 per year if you're under age 50. If you're over age 50, it's $7,500, I think. Don't quote me on that. But you can, if you're just starting out, that's a great place to start. Just open up a regular IRA. It's not an employer plan or anything like that, but it's just a way you can get started saving in a tax-advantaged way. Chapter 7 is in the catbird seat, the many magical benefits of health savings accounts. Does anybody in here have a health savings account? If you don't want to answer, you don't have to. But yeah, man, health savings accounts are the best thing ever, okay? In the tax diversification part, I probably should have just went ahead and added the HSA part to the tax diversification, because Roth IRA, you pay taxes going in, you don't pay taxes going out. Regular IRA, you don't pay taxes going in, you pay taxes going out. HSA, tax deduction going in, tax-free coming out. Best of both worlds. I have changed my recommendations for people that do have HSAs. I now prioritize HSA savings over every other type of savings. Okay, unless it's an employer plan, that's the only exception. So I would, if I had an option, if I was thinking about my priorities for saving, I would max out my employer match, and if I had extra money, then I would put it in the HSA. And the reason you would do that is because the money goes in tax-free. You get a deduction when you put the money in, and then when you pull the money out for health-related expenses, you don't have to pay taxes on the money. So it's the best of both worlds. It's a really great tool, and there are some strategies you can use if you make plenty of money, and you can leave that money there and not use that money to pay for your health expenses. So you put the money in, you leave it there, and you pay for your medical expenses out of pocket. You can let that money grow, and it can be a huge retirement asset for you. So wouldn't recommend that, but what you can do is this. Let's say you're young and you're healthy and you start saving money in your HSA and you don't pull your money out of your HSA to pay for medical expenses. Save your receipts, because if you start an HSA when you're age 30, you're going to have medical expenses. You're going to have a prescription. You're going to go to the doctor. You're going to have a broken leg or whatever. Pay for that money out of your pocket and save your receipts. Your receipts for all of your medical expenses from the age of 30 to the age of 65 are like golden tickets. You can reimburse yourself for something that happened 30 years ago this year. So, let me see if I've got that written down here. I think it's $7,100 per year for a family, $3,900 for a single person, I think. Page 45, yeah, $3,550 for a single person and $7,100 for a family. That's an HRA, that's a health reimbursement account. And HSA is your money all the time. It's an individual account, and so you won't lose your HSA money. So yeah, they're a really great tool. I love HSAs. It boggles my mind that more people don't use them. I think we're probably going to go to one at the bank this year because they're just a great tool. No. So the idea, the reason these were made back in 2003 or 2006, I can't remember, but George W. Bush created these in one of the tax bills that Congress did back then, and the idea was to get individuals to take more of the burden of paying their health expenses, so you have a higher deductible, and your insurance premiums are going to be lower, right? That's the idea, and so you pay for your expenses directly. Which, what does that encourage you to do? If you're having to write the check, you're going to pay closer attention, right? You're going to want to get the better price. And so it really puts a little burden on you to try to get a cheaper cost, have a cheaper cost for your health care. So it's really good. It aligns incentives appropriately. It gives you a great tax benefit going in and coming out. It's just the best of both worlds. I think Fidelity might have an HSA. I can't remember. They do? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So there are multiple, and another good thing about it is once you get a certain amount of cash built up in it, and I'm sure Fidelity does this, they'll allow you to actually invest it. Because some people think about HSAs and they think, well, it's a health savings account, it's just cash. Well, some of them might require you to keep $1,000 in cash, but then once you get over that amount, then you can invest it. And then you're talking about, think about that. You're putting your money in tax-free, you get a deduction right now when you put it in, and you invest it, and you're making 8% or whatever. And, then whenever you reach retirement, you pull it out to reimburse yourself for health expenses that you incurred years ago. You can buy a yacht with it if you want to. Don't buy a yacht, but you can buy whatever you want with it. A used yacht, definitely a used yacht, at least 6 years old, so you can get a 60% discount. So, yeah. So that's HSAs. Any questions on HSAs? All right. The next one is college savings, giving it the old college try. Why 529 plans are a great education savings option. There are the best savings vehicle for a college savings account is the 529. The 529 is similar to a Roth IRA. Okay, so it's kind of like a Roth IRA for college. The money goes in tax-free. When you pull the money out to pay for college or higher education expenses, the money comes out tax-free. Okay, so did I say it goes in tax-free? It does not go in tax-free. You pay taxes on it when it goes in, but it comes out tax-free. So I've got this for all my kids. I started contributing to it when they were very young. It's grown to be a pretty good bit of money, and grandparents, great-grandparents can contribute to the account for them. That's something we do. And for my grandmother's birthday, instead of giving her something, she doesn't need anything, so we just make a contribution to the kids' college savings account in her name, and we give her a card and say, this is what we did. And she likes that better than anything we could, give her. Same thing for my parents, and and they'll, again, like on birthdays, they'll make a contribution to their college savings account. So it's just a great thing you can do to save for college, because college is very expensive. And worst case scenario, if you don't use it, a lot of people ask this: what if my kid doesn't go to college? It's not that big a deal. And another good thing about the 529 is it's mine. Like the 529 accounts I have for my kids, that's my account. It's not their account. So if they want to goof off and not go to college, and that's fine if they don't want to go to college. I'm not going to make them go to college, but they should, and I hope they go to SAU. But if they don't, they choose not to, it's my money. I can do whatever I want to with it. And so if I want to go back to college, I can. I don't think I'm going to go back for a third time, though. I think I've gotten enough of it, unless I get my JD, become a lawyer or something. But Yeah. Votech schools, trade schools. It's very broad in what you can spend it on, and I'm pretty sure. I don't know if on the 529, I want to say you can use it for private school too. I think I'd have to go back and look on that. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, yeah. Worst case, let's say you put in $25,000 over her life up until that point, and it's now worth $50,000, and she doesn't want to go to school. Well, you can transfer it to your other kid's name if you want to, if he needs it, or you can transfer it as far away as a first cousin. So you can make a deal with your in-laws or your brother or sister or whatever for their kids. So there's lots of options. Worst case though, if there's nobody to spend the money on and you just got this money sitting there, you pay taxes on the gain. So in that situation, it would be you'd pay taxes on half of whatever you pull out. So if you just want to pull out $10,000 of that account, 5,000. I think the way it works is it would be a pro rata. So you get 5,000 would be a return of principal kind of, and then 5,000 would be income. I can't remember for sure if you have to pull the income out first. Don't quote me on that, but worst case scenario, if you pulled it all out, you'd have to pay taxes on $25,000 plus you'd have to pay a penalty, 10% penalty. So it's really not that big a deal because it has become just a big savings account for you. Yeah, right. No. Your original investment is intact. So you just have to pay taxes on the gain, and you have to pay a penalty on the gain. So yeah, that's right. You want to pay as little taxes as you can, and not go to jail. So no, it has to be for. There are specified. In order for it to be tax free, you have to use it for specified expenses for school. So it's like room, board, books, tuition, of course. I think if they require you to have there's a list of stuff you can spend it on. It's all pretty basic stuff. That yeah, it's your money. You can buy a car with it or whatever. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's your money. Yep. That's one of the things I really like about it is it's not your kids' money. They can't think, oh, when I turn 21, I'm gonna take this money. No, none of that. It's your money all the time.
There was not an extra
Yeah.
money.
Sure, yeah.
Now there's a little,
Yeah.
not a lot.
Right.
But my oldest,
Mhm.
after her, I've got a sixth grader and an eighth grader.
Mhm.
So I guess the question is, now that there is a little, is it worth it at this point? I mean, this close,
Yeah.
worth that?
I mean, yeah. It's never too late until it's too late. Um, you can like if you're gonna save it anyway. If you in Arkansas, if you use Arkansas's plan, each state has their own plan, and Arkansas's plan is called the gift plan. And if you put money in the gift plan in Arkansas, you get to deduct it on your Arkansas state taxes. So, and you can contribute up to like $10,000 a year per couple, and get a deduction on your. So it basically save you $700 if you put $10,000 in there, which is it's better than poking the eye with a hot stick, but not a whole lot. But if you're gonna save money anyway for college, it's the best way to do it probably. Hold them back 1 year. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and they've got the Arkansas 520. I mean, it's one of the best ones in the nation. It's a really good plan, and they've got like age weighted things where you put their age in. It knows how old they are, and you just put an age weighted option, so you can choose aggressive, moderate, or conservative, and just whatever risk tolerance that you want, and it will automatically scale back the risk as they approach graduation. So really simple. You don't think about it anymore unless you make a mistake like me. And for my son, back a couple of years ago, I was checking his balance, and he was kind of lagging behind. Well, I was going to be real smart and do a little market timing. The market had just taken off real big, and so I thought, I'm just going to put him in a conservative, and then when it crashes, I'll put him in the aggressive. Well, I forgot about it. And so I cost him a couple $1,000s there probably by doing that, but he can put it on my tab. Um, so but 529s are great. Arkansas's plan is great. And it's if you want to go check it out, it's just www.thegiftplan.com. It's in the book. I think I linked to it in there so you can check it out. But it's really easy to set up, easy to do, and it's a great tool. So that's college savings. Next chapter here is called Staring Out the Window and There Ain't Nothing Out There. How to deal with market downswings. And this is something my granddad would say a lot. He said there's two types of loans, them that pays and them that makes you stare out the window. And there ain't nothing out there. Sometimes things don't go the way we want it to go. And there was Black Friday of 1987, which I'm not old enough to remember. There was a tech and dot-com bubble of 2001. Some of you guys might remember that. There was the Great Recession of 2008, the financial crisis. And as I was writing this, I was finishing it up in March, and that's when I hit the gas, and I had to go back and add this in. As I'm writing this, the COVID-19 panic of 2020, where the stock market fell about 35% in about a month, which was deeper and sharper than the 2008 financial crisis, but we had a super V or a V-shaped at least recovery that we've had, thankfully, in the market. Of course, a lot of that is from printing a bunch of money, but that's another issue. But be mindful of that. This kind of thing can happen. All right. So if you're approaching retirement, you should not have all your money in the stock market. You should probably be somewhere closer to 60% stocks, 40% fixed income, or maybe even 50-50 if you have enough money and you don't need to take risk. A 50-50 portfolio is very resilient to market shocks. Just keep that in mind. Your risk tolerance is really important, and you need to think about how much risk you're taking with your money. And if you're 5 to 10 years, you could be 60 to 70%. 60% if you want to be a little bit more conservative, 70% if you want to be a little bit more aggressive. Yeah, right. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. You want to make sure you got enough time if things don't go the way you want. There is, there's variance. Okay, so when we talk about stock returns, normally a lot of times people just use 10% as an example. Well, that doesn't mean it's going to be 10% every year. It's not, stock returns don't go like this. Stock returns go like this, right? And you got to be able to survive the roller coaster, right? And that means that as you approach retirement, you need to scale your risk back a little bit. I use the example of poker. Fun game. It's a great game to play. It teaches you all kinds of life lessons. But you can play poker perfectly, but there's still going to be variance. You can do the right thing every time. Every move you make in poker, you can make the right move every time, and still it won't work out for you sometimes. But if you make the right decision over and over again and do the right thing, you can win in the long run. And so, same thing with investing. Variance is going to happen. So in any given year, you might have a year where you're down 10 or 15 or 20%, or in the case of March, you're down 30%. But now, year to date, you're up a little bit maybe. But anything can happen in a given year, and that's why you have to take a long-term look at it and realize there's going to be variance, but be willing to take the risk because there's a good reward if you take the risk. And there's a lot of mindset here. If you're not careful and you think about it too much and think about it too deeply, in March you'll panic and you'll sell and you'll miss the huge rebound that you get. So get your plan, stick to it. When something bad happens, rebalance your portfolio, stick to the plan, and just go on. But just be mindful that this kind of thing can happen and expect it. Expect the bad thing to happen. And then when the bad thing happens, execute the plan like you're supposed to. Chapter 10. This was the chapter that if this book ever got on the map, I have a feeling that maybe chapter 10 might be the one that puts it on the map if it does. In chapter 10, I kind of have a pet topic that I love to talk about, and I've been kind of hitting at it this whole time, but I love to talk about cryptocurrency, okay? And the reason I love to talk about it is because of what the monetary policy of the United States. The monetary policy of the United States is to print more and more and more and more money. Send out stimulus and bailouts and all this and print money to pay for the things that the government wants. Well, what does that do whenever they print money? What does that do to the money in your pocket? Value goes down, right? Well, cryptocurrencies can offer a completely different monetary policy that is fundamentally different than every centrally controlled monetary policy that exists in the world. You have knowable scarcity, which means you know exactly how much is out there at any given time. You know how much Bitcoin is out there right now. You know how much Bitcoin is going to be out there tomorrow. You know how much Bitcoin is going to be out there 100 years from now. And in that way, Bitcoin particularly and other cryptocurrencies are honest money, what I call honest money, money that you know how much is out there. Like, does anybody have any idea how many dollars are out there? I don't. I have no idea how many dollars are out there. Some $40 trillion, $50 trillion, who knows how much is out there. But the type of currency that we use, that's why gold has been a popular currency throughout history. Why is gold popular? Because you can't just print it up, right? You can't just decide, oh, I'm just going to go make a whole bunch of gold. Gold is pretty knowably scarce. And so in this chapter, I talk about monetary policy. I don't want to get too bogged down in that. But cryptocurrency itself is a new technology that 20 years ago was not even possible. The reason cryptocurrency is so groundbreaking is because if I took a picture of you guys right now and I sent you all that picture, how many copies of that picture are now in existence? Well, how many of 40 or whatever, 40 copies of that digital asset, of that digital picture? Well, then y'all could all send it to your friends, and we could create a digital asset that started with one picture, and we could have literally millions of copies of this digital asset very quickly. And let's say that one first picture had some kind of value. Well, what would happen if it got replicated over and over again? What would happen to that value? It would get diluted, right? Because that's what happens when you create something over and over again and you copy it, and you can make copies of it really quickly. Well, before 10 years ago, we didn't think it was possible to have a knowably scarce digital asset, okay? There were many attempts at having a true digital currency, but they all failed because people figured out how to replicate the digital dollar or the digital unit. Until Bitcoin, having a digital asset that was knowably scarce and unable to be spent twice. If I send you one Bitcoin, which is worth about $16,000 as I say this, you know for sure that I don't have it anymore, that you have it, and that nobody else has it. So it solved the double spend problem. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but it's a really big deal, okay? And people are about $270 billion sure right now, as I say this, that Bitcoin is a really good store of value, okay? And it looks like that's the way the market is interpreting what Bitcoin is. And so it was a groundbreaking technology. It's based on cryptography and distributed ledger technology. And it's a really cool innovation that has come about. And it to me, what it does is it can put central governments, centralized banks in check and say, hey, we're an honest currency. You can't manipulate me. That's what Bitcoin says if you personify it. But Bitcoin is true hard money, unlike anything else we've seen. Yep. Well, Bitcoin is like fire or a gun or a vehicle, and you can do bad things with it if you want to. So if you buy illicit things with it, or you make a lot of money on it and you don't pay your taxes on it, you will go to jail. Just like if you buy gold back in 2003 for $300 an ounce and you sell it for $2,000 an ounce a few months ago and don't pay your taxes on it. So it's just a tool. It's a technology. So You can run over somebody with your car, or you can take somebody to the hospital in your car. You can defend yourself and your family with a gun, or you can murder somebody with a gun. So it's just a tool. But it's a really interesting thing, and I love it. So, but what I give in this, if Bitcoin's not your thing, if you don't think it's a big deal, with this is where I talk about speculative investment strategies. And basically what I say in this chapter is, if you want to invest in something that's speculative, something like Bitcoin or something like, the hot stock tip, whatever it is, like the Neo car, it's like this competitor to Tesla, or some other out there technology that could go really high or could crash down. Whatever you do, if you want to invest in something like that, it should be a very small amount of your net worth. And what I say in this is, let's say your net worth is $100,000. Maybe you just want to put $1,000 in something that's more speculative. For you, it might be 5%, but I certainly wouldn't say, I would say don't put any more than like 10% in something speculative like this. If you put more than 10% of your net worth or your investable assets in something that's very speculative, you're probably taking a little more risk than you ought to. But in this chapter, I give you a strategy for how to invest in speculative assets. And by the way, disclaimer here, I'm not telling you to go buy a bunch of Bitcoin. I'm not telling you to go buy a bunch of speculative assets, any at all, necessarily. But if you read about some of these things and they're intriguing to you and you want to put some money in something that's more speculative, this is how you can do it and be prudent while you do it. And so what I say in the book basically is, don't put any more in than you can afford to lose. Have targets. So I think the example I give in the book, I can't remember exactly what it is, but let's say you put 1%. Say your net worth is $100,000. You put in $1,000 in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin grows 5 times, and now you got 5% of your net worth is in Bitcoin. Well, take your original investment back at that point. So sell 1% of it and bank that. And if it keeps going up, it goes up to 10%, take another 1%. Sell another 1% of it back. And pocket that as gain. And then it goes up to 15%, sell another 1%. And then you have an overall maximum. Say your overall maximum is 20%. So if Bitcoin grows from $1,000 to $20,000 of your net worth, you sell anything over $20,000. So if it keeps going up, you just keep selling, and you hold $20,000 worth of Bitcoin. If it crashes back down, then you might want to buy again. So if it goes up to 20% of your net worth and it crashes back down to 5%, you might want to put your 1% that you bank back in. But what that does is it just gives you a strategy for investing in something that's more speculative. And it keeps you from, getting over your skis and, putting in more money than you can really afford to lose. But that's a speculative investment strategy. There's all kinds of different things out there that you can invest in. And on speculations, don't invest any more than you can afford to lose. And I see that as something completely different and separate than your regular investment plan. So just keep that in mind. Any questions on that? Lots of more information in this chapter about cryptocurrencies in particular and speculative investments in general. But any questions on that? Yeah. Yeah.
Cryptocurrency, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't that like a workable, doesn't that mean all that stuff?
Right. Yeah, I hear that a lot. And here's what I would say to that. I hear a lot of people that talk about that. I would say it's the opposite of that. Because what is the one world currency? What does it do? What's the point of it? Control. Exactly. That's exactly what it's for. It's if you're going to play, the only way you're going to get to participate in my economy is if you play by my rules, right? Bitcoin is the opposite of that. It includes everybody. It can't be stopped. It's uncensorable. It's immutable. It can't be changed. Everybody is welcome. If you have an internet connection and a device that can connect to the internet, you can play. That's the only thing it requires. It doesn't care what color you are. It doesn't care what your religion is. It doesn't care what you believe about politics. It doesn't care about any of that. All it is code. And so my argument is that is the anti-one world currency. So because it doesn't exclude anybody. It's totally free and open for anybody to take. And it can't be stopped. And so there's no Bitcoin corporation that's going to say you can't play on our playground. There's nobody like that because it's just code. So yeah. So a one world currency would be something like Libra or like the EU with the euro. That would be more like what a one world currency would be. All these governments getting together and they create this monetary system that everybody has to use. And if you don't use it, if we don't like you, you can't be a part of it, and we're going to exclude you. That's really what I think a one world currency would be. It would be controlled by governments, and Bitcoin isn't, which makes it, God's money. I'm just kidding, but but it's really is an interesting innovation in money. Because if you think about it, I mean, I go into the history of money a little bit in this chapter, and I talk about what people have used for money throughout history. And people used to use seashells in different places. Some people would use different kinds of rocks. People would use tobacco leaves. Really anything. Gold has been probably it's the most famous example of a currency that's lasted generations and millennia, because it's easy to transport. It's relatively small. It doesn't corrode. You can divide it pretty easily, and it holds its value because you're not going to find a huge glut of it and double the supply of gold in a year. Probably, if you did, what would happen? What if we found a glut of gold that was about as much as we have in circulation now? What would happen to the price? It would drop. Yeah, exactly. So, for that reason, gold is not perfectly knowably scarce, but Bitcoin is. So, Bitcoin is kind of like digital gold in that sense. So it's more knowably scarce than gold is because it's based on code. It's math. It's basically like investing in math. So anyway, it's really a cool thing. You ought to check it out. I'm not saying invest a bunch of money or any money in it at all, but it's really worth your time, I think, to understand it at least. Right. Right. Correct. It's code. Yeah, it's code. Yeah, sure. Well, but we all know that things that don't have physicality have value, though, right? There are things that we can think of that have. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, technically you could. Yeah. You could print out a QR code with your Bitcoin on it, and you could hand it to somebody, and you would be, effectively giving them some Bitcoin. Yeah. You can make it kind of physical. Yeah. You can print out. Well, but okay, right. Well, let's say you could do that. You could scam people if you did that, but it would be a scam. I could print out a QR code that was loaded with $5 worth of Bitcoin, and I could give it to you, and then you could scan it and put it in your wallet. Now, I could also do the same thing. I give one to Kyle and give one to you, and whichever one of you scanned it first would get it. So, yeah. But that's not normally how transactions happen. Normally, transactions happen at point of sale. So normally it would be like, hey, I just did this work for you. I need $50. And so you could just send $50 worth of Bitcoin, and you would know immediately that you got it, and it couldn't be reversed or anything. So it's really cool. If anybody wants to, by the way, I can help you get set up with a wallet and show you how it works, just if you want to. And I'll give you, 50 cents worth of Dash or something, just if anybody's really curious about that. Something I'm passionate about. I love it. The reason I love it is not for the investment part of it, but just for the technology and the monetary policy of it. I just think it's much more free and fair to everybody. And the transaction costs can go down to zero with cryptocurrencies pretty much. So I think it's the way of the future for currency. It's a way we can hold governments accountable. It gives people sovereignty over their money. And anyway, I'm a big proponent of it. But that's chapter 10. Any other questions on that? We're getting close, aren't we? Oh, yeah. All right. The next chapter is about charitable gifting. There are some strategies that you can use. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I think I'm going to skip ahead pretty much to the next two chapters and go over maybe 5 or 10 minutes. We good? 5 or 10 minutes maybe? Okay. With the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, tax reform law of 2018, the standard deduction got raised. And so most people now just take the standard deduction. For this reason, there's a strategy that some people use, and it's not for everybody, but if you give $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 a year away, this may be a strategy that you could use where you bunch your gifts into a single year, and you take a big deduction in year one, and then you pay the money out to the charity over the next 2 years. And what you can do is you can put it in an account. It's called a donor advised fund. I talk about it in the book. I don't want to go into too much detail about this. But basically, you take a big deduction in year one, and then you pay the money out to your charities over years 2 and 3. And it helps you take advantage of the tax laws that we have. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail on that, but you can read about that if that's something that is interesting to you. I've got on page 66, I've got just kind of a chart that shows you the difference between just giving $10,000 a year and then giving $30,000 in the first year, and then nothing in years 2 and 3 to the charity, but you can still give it out if you use the donor advised fund. Another thing, if you're in retirement and you have an IRA and you have to take the RMD that we were talking about, the required minimum distribution that you have to start taking out when you're age 72, the IRS allows you, instead of, if you don't need the money, if you still are working or if you have other funds that you can use and you don't actually need the money, instead of taking that money from your IRA, you can direct it to a charity. So that's the qualified charitable distribution strategy. So that's something else you can do. And again, like I said, leave your IRAs to the church. If you're trying to think of what you need to leave to the church, the best thing is your regular IRA, not your Roth IRA. Leave your Roth IRA to your kids, unless you don't have kids, and then leave your Roth IRA to the church too, right? So, but the IRA, regular IRA, is the best thing to leave to a charity. Right? Yeah, that's the qualified charitable. Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's got to go straight to the charity to avoid the taxes on it. So yeah, good point. Chapter 12. I talk about how to train your children to be adults. So that's the thing. I think a lot of times we think about our kids and we think about them as kids, and they certainly are, and we need to protect their innocence and things like that. But we also need to realize that we're training our children to become adults. And so we don't need to baby them too much, and especially with money. I think it's important that we let our kids fail with money. One of the most fun things I get to do as a dad who is a financial advisor is to see the pain in my kids' face when they spend all their money on that dumb toy, and then there's this next toy that comes along that they want, and they just blew all their money on this dumb thing that broke, and for them to feel that pain. Why? Why do I like that? Maybe I'm a masochist or whatever, but the reason I like that is because they're learning that lesson early on something that's small and insignificant. I think we need to let our kids fail in money so that they can learn. If you don't let them fail, if you say, oh, it's okay, I'll buy it for you, they didn't learn anything. All they learned is blow the money, and then daddy's going to bail me out. Okay? So I'll do things. I'll tell the story in here. One time, my 7-year-old and my 10-year-old decided to climb into the dryer because they thought that would be fun. Well, it bent the wheels or whatever on the dryer. The thing still doesn't work right. But I made them buy a kit. It was like $30 on Amazon. So they had to come out of their pocket with $30. And I made the older one pay a little more because I thought he was a little bit more responsible for this. So he had to pay $20 and the younger one had to pay $10 for it. But we rebuilt that dryer with their $30, and they learned that lesson. They don't get in the dryer anymore because they had to pay for the broken dryer. I told another story. My middle son bought. It was one of those. I can read it. What is it? It was a Paw Patrol. It was a Paw Patrol watch. He really wanted it. He wanted it so bad, and it was getting really close to Christmas time. And I said, all right, son, all right, Josiah, I will let you buy this watch, but you're going to have to buy it from me at my price. You're not going to pay the rack price. You're going to have to pay me my price for it. How much are you willing to pay to get this $12 watch? I bid him up to like $25 on it. So he paid me $25 for a $12 watch. If he had just waited for 3 weeks, he could have got it for Christmas. Again, I know I sound mean, but I'm wanting to impose, I'm trying to create opportunities for my kids to feel pain because kids these days don't have those opportunities. But you know what? He learned a big lesson there because he got it and he got buyer's remorse because he got tired of that thing. And then he sold it to my younger son for $20. And so Judah got to learn the lesson. But anyway, I think I got the point through to them. I tried to help them learn to delay gratification a little bit. My first job was a pine cone picker-upper. My grandfather would always let me pick up, me and my brother. We would, whenever the pine cones fell, we would just race to go outside to see who could pick up the most pine cones. You know, we get paid a penny a piece. That was my first job. And we've kind of chosen not to do allowances with our kids. I don't stand real strong on that or whatever. What we do instead is when they go above and beyond, we'll pay them for their job. And we pay by the job. If you do this job, we'll pay you this amount of money. Most of the time, that's the way we try to do it, at least anyway. And that seems to work pretty well. Again, I'm not saying this is how you have to do it, but this is what we've done, and it seems to work pretty well. My girls, I've got 2 girls and 3 boys, and the girls, I mean, they've never felt the pain because it's amazing. I mean, they just save the money and they never spend it. And you know, my daughter emailed me earlier today and was like, Dad, I've got too much cash. I need to save some money. I'm like, well, how much cash do you have? $250? I'm like, $250? Where'd you get $250? Well, she doesn't spend any money on anything. So it's just amazing. Like, can you imagine when you're 14 or 15 years old having $250 in cash? I couldn't imagine that. But anyway, the girls and the boys just totally different. The boys, as soon as they see that thing, whatever it is, they want it, and they'll spend all their money to get it. And so they're a little bit harder to teach. But again, we're training our kids to be adults, and adults have bigger problems to deal with. And I would rather them make smaller, more insignificant mistakes early and learn those lessons when it costs $10 or $15 or $20 or $30 than make big, huge $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 mistakes later on in life. At least that's my hope anyway. One strategy for your kids, if you want to help your kids start saving and investing, once they get an actual job, they can start investing in a Roth IRA. Okay? And again, you think about that. So I talked about like a 40-year time period if you have a Roth IRA. Well, if you've got a kid that's 16 or 17 years old, I mean, you're talking about maybe a 50-year time frame where you can let that money grow. So just keep that in mind, something you can do. You can only contribute how much money they actually make. So what I would recommend is if they want to do that, maybe make a deal with them. Hey, if you go to work and you make money and you contribute $100, I'll match it with $50, something like that. You know, that would give them incentive to save a little money just to teach them on that. So it's on the gross. Yeah, it's on the gross. Yeah. Yeah, you can max it out as long as your box 1 wages, I think, your gross income is above the yeah. Right. Well, yeah. So even if your take home is less, you can, in theory, you go up to your gross amount. Yeah. Yeah, as long as it's over the max. Yep. That's right. So that's something to keep in mind. All right. Last chapter, and I'll be done. How do you pick a financial advisor? So, you know, I've kind of brought you on a journey from starting out. Saving is possible. Taking risk is important if you want to, you know, increase your net worth and increase your wealth and create a nest egg for yourself that can bring you to a comfortable retirement or work option. You know how to save money by budgeting. You know some of the tools and the strategies to use. For some of you, that's all you need. But for some of you, or at some point in the future, all of you, hopefully, will need a little bit of additional help and guidance. So if you get to a point where your financial situation is a little bit more complex than you think you can handle on your own, then you need to decide who to get to help you do that. And that's what chapter 13 is about. Lucky 13. What could go wrong? And so in this chapter, I talk about the different types of advisors. And there's all kinds of different advisors out there. You think about Bernie Madoff. And I say one of the chapter or the paragraph headings is 95% of advisors give all the rest of us a bad name. So there are really there are really good advisors in all different structures of advising, but there are also really bad advisors out there. And some of the things I think that you want to look at, the questions you want to ask, the things you want to be aware of is how does this person get paid? Okay, So when you're considering who you want to go talk to, the first question you want to ask is, how does this person get compensated for their time? Let me tell you a little hint. There are rumors out there that there are people that do this for free. There are not. Every advisor gets paid for what they do. And if somebody tells you that, because I've had this happen multiple times where people will tell me, well, I don't pay anything for my financial advisor. No, you pay. You just don't know how you pay. So follow the money. How are they getting paid? Are they getting paid by, you talked about the 5% like the load, are they getting paid a commission to sell you a fund? So if they're getting paid a commission, there are things called trails where there are 12B1 fees where they get paid kind of a trail, every year if you are invested in the fund that they recommend to you. There are some that, like if you hedge fund managers get paid 2% and then 20% of the income on the fund. Those things don't last very long normally. But follow the money. You want to know who is paying this person to give you advice. Are you paying the person, or is a company, a third party, paying that person? In general, my idea and what I think is best is you want to know exactly how much they're getting paid, and you want to be the one paying them directly. Because if you're paying them, and if they have a fiduciary obligation to you, and that's another thing, the second question, how do they get paid, and what standard of care are they held to? Do they have a suitability standard? A suitability standard means it would be like if I said, are cookies suitable to eat? Are cookies suitable to eat? Yeah. Are they good for you? In moderation, maybe. But suitability standard is like that. It just has to be suitable for consumption. A fiduciary standard, on the other hand, means I have to put your interest above my own. Okay? So if you go talk to a lawyer, if you go talk to a doctor, if you go talk to a accountant, they all have what's called a fiduciary standard. Okay? They have to put your interests above their own. So if you ask me a question, I'm a fiduciary advisor. If you ask me a question, I have to tell you what's in your best interest, not what's in my best interest, not just something that's suitable for you. I shouldn't say, yeah, you need to eat a bunch of cookies because that's suitable. I need to tell you if I'm a dietitian. This is kind of mixing my metaphors here. If I'm a dietitian that has a suitability standard, I may say eat a bunch of cookies. But if I'm a fiduciary dietitian, I say, well, you need to eat a well-balanced meal in the food pyramid and all that. So that's the kind of advisor you want. You want an advisor that has a fiduciary obligation to you to do what's in your best interest always. That way you know, because that's their incentive. In practice, I don't have any incentive to sell a particular fund or company. I can be objective in what I tell people. And so the way we get compensated, we charge a percentage of the assets that are managed. And normally the total cost of doing business with a fiduciary advisor in general is probably about 20 to 40% cheaper than going with a regular sales type person who sells mutual funds. So you get better objective advice, it's cheaper, and so it's less of a drag on your portfolio because, again, the more you pay, if you pay me, I've got to earn my keep. I've got to give you advice enough to cover my cost and then some. And if I can't do that, I'm not going to charge you. Or I'm going to say, look, you just need to do this on your own. You don't need me yet. You might get there where you need me, but if I can't create enough value to justify my fee, then I'm just not going to take the client. I say, no, here, take this book, read it, do what it says, and come back whenever your situation gets a little bit more complex. And so, anyway, let me see if I got anything else on this. Follow the money. Look for some credentials to look for. I'm a certified financial planner. That's kind of the gold standard of financial advising. There are other standards out there, other credentials that you can get, but there's the NAPFA, the fee-only designation. Our firm, Dr. David Ashby has that designation as fee-only. That's for individual advisors. I'm not a member of NAPFA, but he is, but we all practice that anyway. And that's really the main ones that you need to look for. Look for somebody that has the heart of a teacher, all right? Don't look for a flashy salesman that tries to talk you into doing something. Somebody that you know, if you do what they say, you're going to have buyer's remorse, like my kid that bought the $20, $12 Paw Patrol watch. You don't want buyer's remorse with a salesman. You want to talk with somebody that has your best interest in mind. And you want to do it when your situation gets too complex for you to do it on your own. So, anybody have any questions? And I'm 15 minutes over. Any questions? That's okay. That's all right. Of which four? What do you mean? Well, it depends. It's just going to depend. If you're in your lower earning years, then the Roth IRA is the right thing for you. Is that what you're talking about? The different, yeah. If you're in your lower earning years, a Roth IRA makes more sense. I would focus on the Roth IRA. If you're in your peak earning years, where if you think you're making more money now than you'll ever make in your life, and you're at the highest tax rate that you'll ever be, that's when you'd want to focus on the tax deductible contributions to those accounts. And then once you've maxed out those two, if you have extra money, then you would put money in the taxable account. Sure. A good goal is 10% at least if you're starting out. Like if you start out right out of the gate, as soon as you get your first job, 10% is a good goal to get to really quickly, relatively quickly. If you start out at 10% in your mid-20s, that should be fine for you if you can get there. If you haven't done a very good job and you're in your 30s or 40s, that's going to need to be closer to 15 to 20%. If you're in your 50s, you're probably going to be disappointed in retirement unless you can save like 50% of your income or something like that. So yeah, 10% is a good rule of thumb in general. If you're older, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 15, 20% if you haven't done anything yet. So that's a rule of thumb. Anything else? Any other questions? Yep. Subscriptions. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. $350,000, I think. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. If you have an ideal situation, like if you played the game perfectly from start to finish, you would focus early on your Roth IRA, get that bucket built up, and you'd probably be primarily contributing to your Roth IRA or your Roth 401k from your 20s to your mid 30s into your 40s, maybe even. Okay. And so you've built your Roth IRA bucket until, when you're in your 40s. Maybe if your income starts going up, then you might want to do a split strategy where you put half of it in the Roth and half of it in the traditional IRA, or even, all of it in the traditional IRA. Start building that taxable bucket up. Mm-hmm. No, no, no. Yeah, that's right. You have to do. Well, I mean, you could split it, but you can only do six. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, 6 or 7 thousand. I can't remember right now. I can look that up in a minute. But and then your 401k, you can defer or contribute up to 18,500. In addition, yeah, yeah, right, right. No current tax benefit, but there are some tax benefits of just a regular taxable account. Because if you invested in a stock or in a mutual fund and it grows, and you sell it outside of an IRA, you only have to pay capital gains if you hold it over a year. And yeah, you get the long-term capital gains treatment, which is better. And additionally, if you use your taxable account to give with, so instead of writing a check, you give some of your appreciated stocks to a charity, then you avoid taxes completely. Yeah, up to 79 and change. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not 100% sure on that. I'm not an accountant. This is not accounting advice, by the way. I deal with it all the time. Like I talk with people about this kind of stuff, the taxability issues, but I do need to give the disclaimer that I'm not an accountant and this isn't accounting advice. But yes, there are limits for the cap, but that's the current law. It sunsets in 2024, I think, and it goes back, it reverts back to the previous rules, which I think has there are lower limits, and so you would have to pay long-term capital gains on gains after 2024. I think it will revert, but still not as bad as what some people are talking about doing right now. So we can hope that doesn't get put in place at least. But anything else? All right. Well, thank y'all so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you guys and serve you guys. I hope this has been helpful. I'll be here in the front to receive you and talk with you about any questions you might have. It's like we'll have an altar call at the end of the financial planning seminar. But let me pray once again for you guys, and we'll be dismissed. Lord, again, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to your people. I pray that what I've said has been helpful. I pray that they will take it to heart. I pray that they will be intense about living for your glory and for planning for the future and just recognizing the opportunity that's in front of them to do well and to make work optional and to make it where they can spend their life instead of working, perhaps doing something great for you in missions or serving in the church in ways that they wouldn't be able to without the kind of plan we've been talking about. I pray that you would free up a generation of people to serve you in ways that could never be imagined before. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.